Jeff Ryle from G4 Geomatic Resources in Houston. Today we're going to go through how to set up a RTK base station, and we're going to actually use an older CS15 data collector and go through this example using the Satel EZ Pro 35 watt. So you might be wondering, why are we concentrating on an older data collector that's been phased out? We have a lot of clients that have CS15s, and with the 3G, they're saying, what value does this have? And if they're working outside the network and they want to have RTK UHF radios in areas outside the network or where there's no cell phone coverage or to increase accuracy, this is a nice option to utilize existing older equipment. So the CS15 is older. With the 3G, it cannot be used unless you use a hotspot for network. But this can be paired with an older sensor and with a Satel base radio. And the nice thing is when this unit is paired up, you can just leave that older data collector with that sensor and the base radio, and it can move around with your crews to work with your existing new equipment. For example, a GS18 or GS16 RTK Rover. So we're going to go through this example today. So to start off with, we'll take a look at what sensors the CS15 is compatible and which ones it's not compatible to work with. We'll take a quick look at the Satel base radios. And also another functionality is when the base station is set up and transmit RTK data, we can record static data at the same time. And once that's downloaded, the next day we can send it to Opus if we need to get a good position on that base station. So we don't have set control on the job site. That's a really neat way of killing two birds with one stone. We have another video on my YouTube channel on how to import this data into Infinity to export a RINEX file. Okay. Then we'll take a look at the CS15, go over the settings, and then we'll take a look at the actual Satel base radio setup and how to change the channels. Okay, so first of all, let's take a look at the CS15. Once it's an older unit, and over here it can be interfaced to a GS10, a GS14, or a GS15. So the CS15 will not, so you have an X here. The GS07 cannot act as a base, it cannot interface or act as in base mode with any data collector, and the CS15 will not interface at all to GS16 or GS18. For using these as base stations, you'd have to have a CS20. So I just want to go over the compatibility. The other thing is, if you are hooking up the CS15, the firmware version has to be checked as well. So the latest firmware version is 9.05 for the CS15. And if the sensor is running any version of 9, or the latest version, I think it's 10.6, then this version 9 is compatible with any version of 9 or 10 on the sensor. Now, if let's say the CS15 had version 6 on the data collector, then these sensors would have to be on the same level, like version 6. Otherwise, it'd be a firmware incompatibility. So if you were using this, we'd recommend just updating to the latest firmware or on the same level firmware in order for the CS15 to talk to that sensor. Okay. This is just a schematic. In our example, we can use a GS14. Here it shows it on a tri-bracket with a height hook. A lot of clients would do a 2-meter fixed height pole, and this actually has a single cable in the diagram to a battery. We recommend using the GV274 cable, so Y cable, so that way it'll hook up to the GS14 or 15 or the GS10. And there'll be a split cable SAE clip to your 35 amp hour 12-volt battery, and that GEV274 will also plug into your Satel base radio, and that would be either the EZ Pro or the 4 Pro. And the key thing is when we set up the base station radio, in this case I have a telescopic mast, the higher we get the antenna, the more range we're going to get with the radio. So that's very important, and we'll make sure that we use the 5 dB mobile whip antenna. So I just want to highlight the Y cable that we'll use for the radio setup. Later on, when we set it up, we'll go through, there's two different radios, the Satel EZ Pro. This is the older radio, but with a chip shortage in the beginning of 2022, this is the only radio that we can get right now. So in this example, we use the EZ Pro, so it's current. And on here, we can You'll see sometimes the Satel 3S is the data type that you'll see on the screen on the actual radio, and that corresponds to Satel 4SK on the rover. Now, if we ever go in, sometimes it is confusing the device names. So if you go into the CS15, we'll go over this later. The Satel EZ Pro, you want to use the GFU27. So under the radio tab, we'll later on see the GFU27, and that's a baud rate of 19.2. Later on, we'll go and hit new down here and create a new device. I could rename that something that's more easier to correspond with. If you do the Satel 4 Pro, we currently can't get them with the chip shortage. And see, there's a little, you can tell the difference here. They look exactly the same, but if you look at the box, the name says Satel 4 Pro. And once again, on the CS15, if we scroll down, the device name would be Satel EZPRO, which is Satel 4 Pro. Once again, we can hit a new device, highlight that, rename it to something that maybe call it Satel 4 Pro. But I just want to show the device names for both the EZ Pro up here. Once again, the EZ Pro is the label right here, and the 4 Pro. Okay. All right. So what we can do is we can collect static data at the same time. When static data collector is being collected, it's important that we have an SD card in the sensor. So we need a mini SD card for the GS14. A regular SD card will work for the GS15 or GS10. And when it turns on, we'll see the light flash every 5 or 10 seconds. So once again, what I'll do is I'll pull up the simulator. And how do we turn on static? In the main screen, if I go to work, I want to go down to base mode. So it's number 7, base mode. And when I'm in base mode, it'll take around 30 seconds, and it'll Bluetooth to the sensor once it's hooked up. Then you just instrument, base settings, and see raw data. In this case, when I check this box, you can do 5 or 10 seconds. And Leica format MDB, and then just hit OK. And then that should allow you then start collect static data while you're doing your RTK UHF radio operations. Okay, let's take a quick look at the CS15 and how we can Bluetooth it to the base station. This example is going to be the GS14, and go through the settings.
Okay, today we have a CS15 that's hooked up to a GS14. Right now on the main screen, so I go to number 2 jobs and go down to job properties. We have a job created called radio base. If I page over, we can have a code list, and also we have a coordinate system here at Texas South Central for Houston. So we'll store that. In the main screen, we're going to go to the base mode. So if I hit number 1, go to work, and scroll down to switch to base menu at the bottom, number 7.
Connection to GS sensor
and
lost.
it'll disconnect from the rover, and will put us in base mode. So what's neat is when we first come in here, we're going to interface to the actual GS14, in this case is our base station. So we come down here to instrument, go to base connections, connect the base. You'll see we'll pick the GS14. If you had a 15, you scroll over and change that, hit Bluetooth, and hit F3 search. In this case, it's already hooked up, so I won't read Bluetooth.
Connected to GS sensor.
And right now you see it's Bluetooth, and there's a big circle up here. We're tracking satellites. So on a base station, this never fixes because you have your autonomous position, and our CQs down here will be 16 and 8 feet, which is normal. Let's take a look at the settings for the radio. So we come down to number 1, base settings, satellite tracking. In this case, we have GPS, GLONASS, and Galileo turned on. And we have a 12-degree cutoff angle and automatic. You can do 10-degree cutoff angle, either way it's fine. And once again, we'll go back to instrument, base connections, and we'll go down to all of the connections. And on the third line, RTK base number 1, we'll hit F3 edit. And GS port number 1, that's where our cable's hooked into the GS14. And device, we're running a Satel EZ Pro, and that device is Satel GFU27. Now I can hit that device button because it will default, and say I scroll down and I pick that Satel GFU27, I can hit new and create a new one, which I did. So I called it Satel EZ Pro. So if I edit or hit new, I'll put a name that makes more sense, one Satel EZ Pro, and see the baud rate is 19.2. If I had this hooked up to a Satel 4 Pro, it would be a different device. We come down and there's another device, or we can create a new device, and that new device would actually be a baud rate of 115.2. Okay, so I toggle it over and go to 115.2 and then call that Satel 4 Pro. Okay, so for now just call it 4 Pro, and in this case we're running the Satel EZ Pro, and I just renamed it. Now the RTK data format, we want RTCM version 3 MS.
Let's stop this real fast. I just want to just go back just to point out that when you first go in here, I clicked over, you'll see there's 3 tabs. Just make sure you click on the radio tab, and that accesses the radios that are available to be used.
And I just renamed it. Now the RTK data format, we want RTCM version 3 MSN. MSN compacts it to make it more efficient. The data rates, we can click over here, 1 second. RTK base ID, we'll leave this at 0, but you can put like a number from 1 to 11. And that's broadcast over if you want to have a ID verification on the rover side. We'll hit escape and we'll hit OK. And now it's ready to set the base up. So all those interface configurations are working. We'll see we have a radio icon and the arrow's pumping. That just means it's sending data. We really want to check the radio to make sure that it's the TD light's transmitting data. So if we're good, we'll hit go to work, and you have different options. So over any point, we'll grab an autonomous position, plus minus 10 feet, and everything will be relative to 1 or 2 centimeters. So if I hit that, we'll hit OK. I'm just going to grab a position. Right now we're on a 2-meter fixed pole. So that's good. Hit next. And you can call that point name whatever you want, like 1, 2, 3. And hit next. I'll say you want to go to rover mode, but we can keep it in the base mode. Okay. If I hit go to work, over last setup point or over known point, I can hit enter. And then you can pick a point in your job. So hit next. And we got point number 1, 2, 3, or there should be another. If you had a new point, you can type in the northern eastern if it's supplied to you. If you typed in this coordinate and it was more than 300 feet off the true position, you'd see an error message. Okay, say the position of the base differs more than what's expected, and that means you probably picked the wrong point, set up on the wrong point, or you had the wrong coordinates typed in. Okay, so we'll go back. We'll accept.
Another quick note is, I'll just scroll back here. There's a button here called coordinate, and that will toggle. So right now I have north and east, and if I hit this button, it will toggle. So you have latitude and longitude. You can toggle the latitude and longitude, and I'll just show you real fast. So I came in here and picked a point and hit new. The coordinate will toggle. Just be careful because it defaults to east. So if it was down here, we can click on that and change it to west. Okay, so you come down here to hit west if you were going to type in latitude and longitude. So I just wanted to quickly show you, depending on how you have your coordinates, whether north and eastern, then you can quickly go through there and
the wrong coordinates typed in. Okay, so we'll go back. We'll accept this job 1, 2, 3. Hit next, and now we're complete. So now the base station's pumping data, and what we'll do real fast is we just have the other controller. So we have a GS18. And right now the data's pumping in. Okay? So on here, if I click on the rover, change channel, we're on the same channels as channel 1, 461.07 on the Satel EZ Pro. On the rover, we're going to pick the Satel 4SK. In this case, the forward error correction is turned off. That has to be consistent from the base and the rover. So basically, on the base station radio, this is the forward error correction is turned off, and you can can change your channel on there. Now the arrow's pumping in, we're fixed, and once again the RTK data link status, the data's coming in every half a second. Okay? Real fast, I'll show you on the CS15. What's nice is the CS15 is interfaced to the GS14. You can leave it permanently paired. If we were getting stepped on, I could change the channel on the radio, but I can also change it on here as well. So if I came back and went to the base mode, I'll hit the star button, my favorites, and see number 5 is change radio channel. If I hit that, it'll take a while to spin, and there's, I can say right, channel 2, and we'll keep it on the 4SK, forward air correction's off, and now it's changed to channel 2, and on the rover, once again I got changed on the rover as well. So if my GS18 came here, we're now not receiving data, so once again we haven't had data in 20 seconds. I can hit the change channel, change that to channel 2, make sure it's programmed on the same frequencies, hit OK, and now as fast as we do that, it's pumping data in, and we change channels on the base and rover if we're getting stepped on. And that concludes just briefly how to use the CS15 to set up, use the Satel EZ Pro to work with your rover.
Okay, now we're going to move on, take a quick look at the base station and the physical setup. So what I'll do, let me turn the volume down on this. And in this case, what we have now is we have the radio antenna. We have just a 2-meter pole mast just for this scenario. And what we're doing is we have the 5 dB whip. So it's good to inspect this, make sure the cables are good. And then we have a cable that comes down. And the first thing that we do is we're going to hook this up directly to the Satel EZ Pro. That's the first thing we connect, and it's the last thing that we take off, because we don't want to have power or this transmit and have nowhere to go. So we're going to screw that on, and that's going to be the 5 dB antenna that hooks up the Satel. And see, this is the EZ Pro. So right now, we've got the little label there that says the EZ Pro, and we're then going to hook up the Y cable, the GEV274. So you'll see a little label on the actual cable. We'll go up to the GS14. It'll run down here as a Y cable, and there's a little label here that says sensor that goes to port 1 on the GS14, and also hook up to the GS10 or the GS15 as well, depending on what sensor you have. It's going to come down. We actually have 2 SAE clips, and it just confirms the part number here. So in this case, we're using the GEV274 cable. We got a 35 watt, 35 amp hour battery. And see the red dot to red dot? And this is on the right hand side. There's a little label here on this cable that says radio, and that plugs directly into the Satel radio from the GEV274. There's a separate cable. Once again, this hooks up to the SAE, to the cable on the 12 volt battery. You want to make sure you got a marine battery that's fully charged, and it's important that's at least 35 amp hour. And there's a separate 2 SAE clips, and there's a power cable that goes directly into the left-hand side. So the left-hand side will be powered. Once again, there's a red dot to red dot. You line that up, slot it in, and then it'll come down here on the screen, and we can now see we have power. We'll take a quick look at the voltage. It's 12.5 volts, and that's important. If the battery starts getting low, that will drop, and significantly. So if you start seeing it dropping into the range of 11 or 10 volts, that means you need to get a new battery. So it's a good idea to get a new battery every at least 12 to 18 months, and that's how you can keep track if the voltage is good or not. We'll come down here, you see the lights blinking. So once it's turned on, the TD light will blink, transmit data. And in this case, we're now going to, let's back it up a bit, we're now going to show you how we showed earlier how to program the channel or change it. So once again, the TD light will blink. If the RD light was blinking, it means we're getting stepped on. So let's say we were getting stepped on. We'll change the channel right now on channel 2, 461.1. And what we'll do is we'll hit this button to the right-hand side. We hit it twice. 1, 2. And it goes through and make an arrow up or down, and you'll see your channels will change here. So it says channel 3, then hit exit. And it says, do you want to save changes? Yes. Okay, and that's how you can change the channel from channel 2 to channel 3. And once again, we'll look at the TD light and CD light to check data. If the RD light's not blinking, that's how fast you can change the channel on the actual radio EZPRO itself. Same procedure for the 4 Pro as well. If you hit that once, this will then allow you to go in there and change the data compatibility. So we hit it once, and we scroll down. It says data compatibility is Satel 3AS. And once again, that's compatible if you have your CS20 GS18 to the 4SK on the rover side. And that's how you change your compatibility. You can also scroll down and take a look at your, if you want to be in repeater mode. There's also the FEC mode if it's on or off. And you can scroll down. In this case, we have it set off. So like on the previous slides, we just make sure that if FEC is off on the base radio, it's got to be off on the rover radio on the EZPRO. The 4 Pro doesn't have this option, so this is just for the EZPRO is the FEC option. Okay, and there's your radio there. So once again, we want to make sure for the right voltage, transmitting data, CD, and good voltage up there to check the integrity of your battery to make sure it's strong. And once again, we take the power off, there's no load. Right now we have 25 watts, but once again, there's no load. We should be reading 12.7, 12.8, and we have to have a 35 amp hour battery. So that's a brief overview of the base radio setup and how to reprogram it. So just to conclude, just to go over, here's the G4 Geomatics Resources team in Houston. It's myself, Jeff, and John did a lot of help filming and putting the video together, and Ronald and Celia handled the service and GIS in the office. And once again, here's our phone numbers and emails. And there's also a Leica support number. There's an 800 support number and a Leica support email here. So if you need help, just reach out to us. And if you have any questions or need any assistance for your survey needs, please feel free to give us a call or fire us an email. We'd be more than happy to help you out. Thanks for listening. Hope you found this beneficial.